The sky was dark, filled with strange purple clouds that moved unnaturally. The air was thin, cold, and heavy with the scent of dust. Captain Elias Carter took a slow breath, his lungs burning slightly from the unfamiliar atmosphere. His spacesuit's oxygen supply was running low. He had to find shelter soon. His ship, the Horizon, lay in ruins behind him. The crash had destroyed most of its systems. The communication array was shattered. The engines were beyond repair, and his distress beacon was sending out only a weak signal, one that might never reach anyone. Elias clenched his fists. No one was coming to save him. He took a step forward, boots crunching against the cracked, lifeless ground. Around him, jagged rock formations stretched toward the sky like broken fingers. In the distance, he saw something. Structures, tall and ancient, hidden beneath layers of dust and time. Ruins, he muttered, narrowing his eyes. If there were ruins, there was a chance of finding shelter, maybe even supplies. With a final glance at his destroyed ship, Elias started walking. The silent city. The ruins were larger than he expected. Massive stone towers, covered in strange glowing symbols, stood like forgotten guardians. The walls of the buildings were smooth and polished, yet time had left its mark. Cracks ran through the surfaces, and vines of an unknown plant wrapped around the pillars. Elias ran his hand across one of the walls. The symbols pulsed faintly beneath his touch, as if the ruins were still alive in some way. "This place is different," he murmured. He had seen alien structures before, but this felt ancient, almost sacred. He moved deeper into the city, his footsteps echoing in the silence. There were no signs of life. No skeletons, no ruins of a civilization wiped out by war, just emptiness. Then he found something unusual. At the center of the city, a massive structure stood, a temple, or maybe a palace. It was the only building that seemed untouched by time. Its entrance was sealed by a large metallic door, smooth and unbroken. Elias approached it cautiously. His suit's scanner beeped softly, detecting energy inside. "Energy means power," he muttered. If there was power, there could be technology. If there was technology, there was a chance of survival. He pressed his hand against the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep, rumbling sound, the metal began to glow. The symbols on its surface flickered to life, shining with a golden hue. The door slid open. Elias stepped inside. The sleeping mystery. The interior was vast. The walls glowed softly, illuminating the large chamber ahead. Strange machines lined the room, their designs elegant and unfamiliar. But Elias's eyes were drawn to the center. There, floating inside a massive crystal chamber, was a figure. A woman. Elias's breath caught in his throat. She was tall, her body encased in a shimmering silver suit that clung to her form like liquid metal. Her hair, long and flowing, seemed to shift between colors, from deep black to shimmering blue. Her eyes were closed, her face calm and peaceful as if lost in a dream. He stepped closer, heart pounding. Was she dead? Cryogenically frozen? Or was this something else entirely? His fingers brushed against the control panel beside the crystal. The moment he touched it, the entire room reacted. The machines hummed, the air crackled with energy, and the crystal chamber began to glow brighter and brighter. Elias took a step back as the structure trembled. The symbols on the walls shone like stars, and the crystal around the woman started to crack. A sharp breath escaped Elias. She was waking up. The air inside the chamber became thick with energy. A deep humming sound filled the vast room as golden symbols on the walls pulsed like a heartbeat. Elias stepped back, his pulse racing. The crystal structure in front of him was breaking apart, cracks spreading like lightning across its surface. Then, with a final, sharp crack, the entire crystal shattered. A rush of cold mist spilled into the room as she collapsed forward. Elias lunged without thinking, catching her before she could hit the ground. She was warm, too warm, as if her body still held the energy from whatever technology had kept her asleep for so long. Her breathing was slow, controlled, but she was alive. Elias stared at her face, still in shock. She looked human, almost. Her skin was smooth, a soft golden hue, and faint glowing patterns ran across her arms and collarbone. Her long dark hair shimmered, as if shifting between colors in the dim light. And then her eyes opened. They were unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Deep, golden irises with swirling rings of light that moved like living flames. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Then she moved. With a sharp inhale, she pushed against him, forcing herself upright. Elias let go, stepping back cautiously. The woman swayed slightly, then straightened, her expression unreadable. "You're awake," Elias said, his voice hoarse. He didn't know what else to say. She blinked slowly, tilting her head as if trying to understand him. Then she spoke, a language he couldn't understand. Her voice was soft yet firm, her words fluid and melodic. Elias frowned, tapping his wrist console, trying to activate the translation software. But the system was still damaged from the crash. She studied him, eyes narrowing slightly, then glanced around the room. For a brief moment, something flickered across her face. Recognition and sadness. Elias took a careful step forward, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I don't understand you," he said, slow and clear. "Can you understand me?" The woman's gaze flickered to his face, then to his uniform. Slowly, she lifted her hand and pressed her palm against his forehead. A sudden warmth spread through Elias's skull, followed by a rush of images, memories that were not his. He saw a great city filled with light, towers stretching toward the stars. He saw ships that glided through the air, a civilization at its peak. And then, fire, war, silence. The images vanished as quickly as they came. Elias staggered back, his breathing uneven. "What was that?" he gasped. The woman withdrew her hand, her golden eyes now filled with something new. Understanding. "You are not one of them," she said suddenly, in perfect English. Her voice was smooth, but there was an edge of curiosity, maybe even suspicion. Elias blinked. "Wait, you can speak my language." "I can now," she said simply. "Your mind, your memories, gave me enough to understand." Elias shivered. He wasn't sure he liked the idea of someone pulling knowledge from his mind so easily, but he had bigger questions. "Who are you?" he asked. She hesitated for only a moment. Then she straightened, lifting her chin. "I am Veyara, last of the Azeri," she said, as if the name should mean something to him. It didn't. But before he could ask, Veyara looked past him, her expression hardening. The walls of the chamber were shifting. "What's happening?" Elias asked, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. "The palace has awakened," Veyara said. "And now, they will come." "Who's they?" She turned to him, her glowing eyes burning with a strange intensity. "The Guardians. They were meant to protect my people." Elias frowned. "And that's a bad thing." Veyara's lips pressed together. "They will not recognize you." The meaning was clear. The Guardians would see Elias as an intruder. A deep mechanical growl echoed from beyond the chamber doors. Then another, and another. Elias's heart pounded. "Great," he muttered. "I wake up a sleeping alien, and now her ancient robot army wants to kill me. Just my luck." Veyara didn't smile. Instead, she turned toward the entrance, her posture tense. "Ready." "You awakened me, human," she said. "Now, let us see if you can survive." The doors burst open. The doors burst open, and a deep metallic growl echoed through the chamber. Elias's muscles tensed as he instinctively stepped back. From the darkened hallway beyond the entrance, figures emerged, towering, humanoid machines with glowing blue eyes and sleek silver armor. Each one stood at least 8 feet tall, their movements smooth but unnervingly precise. "Guardians," Vayara muttered under her breath. Elias swallowed hard. "Yeah, I got that part." The Guardians took slow, deliberate steps into the chamber, their mechanical bodies humming softly. Their glowing eyes locked onto Elias, scanning him. Then, in perfect unison, they raised their arms. Blades of pure energy extended from their wrists. Elias's stomach dropped. "Oh, that's not good." Vayara's expression darkened. "They do not recognize you as Azari." "Yeah? No kidding." One of the Guardians took another step forward. A mechanical voice echoed through the room, speaking in an ancient language Elias couldn't understand. Vayara stiffened. "They have one command: eliminate intruders." Elias didn't wait to hear the rest. He grabbed Vayara's arm. "Time to go." He turned, ready to sprint toward another exit. But before he could take a step, the Guardians attacked. The first one lunged, its energy blade slashing toward Elias's head. He ducked just in time, feeling the heat of the weapon as it sliced through the air. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding a second strike. Vayara, however, didn't run. She fought. With a single step, she raised her hand, and the golden symbols along her skin flashed with power. A wave of invisible energy slammed into the nearest Guardian, sending it flying backward. It crashed into a stone pillar, its metal body cracking from the impact. Elias barely had time to be impressed before another Guardian charged. He had no weapons, nothing to fight with, but he did have instincts. As the machine swung at him, Elias dodged, then grabbed a broken piece of crystal from the shattered chamber. With all his strength, he drove it straight into the Guardian's exposed joint. The machine shuddered, its movements slowing for just a second. That was all the time Elias needed to kick it backward and roll away. Vayara turned to him, golden energy swirling around her fingers. "You fight well for someone untrained." Elias exhaled sharply. "I'd rather not fight at all." More Guardians were pouring into the chamber. They were relentless, their glowing eyes locked onto Elias and Vayara with cold, merciless precision. "We cannot win this fight," Vayara admitted, her voice tight. "Finally, something we agree on," Elias shouted. She grabbed his arm. "Follow me." Vayara raced toward a hidden passage at the back of the chamber. Elias followed without hesitation, dodging another energy blade as he ran. The Guardians moved to pursue, but Vayara turned sharply and lifted her hand. The walls responded to her command, shifting and closing behind them, sealing the entrance shut. For a moment, there was silence. Elias leaned against the cold wall, panting. Well, that was close. Vayara didn't respond right away. She stood still, her hands clenched into fists. Elias frowned. "Hey, you okay?" She took a slow breath before finally speaking. "This was my home," she said quietly. "Now my own Guardians do not recognize me." Elias hesitated. He wasn't great with emotional moments, but even he could tell this wasn't easy for her. "They're just machines," he said. "Machines can be reprogrammed." Vayara turned to him, her golden eyes filled with something deep. Pain, but also determination. "They were not just machines," she said. "They were created to protect the Azari Empire. And if they attack us now, it means my empire is truly gone." Elias let her words sink in. He had no idea what it was like to wake up and realize everything you knew, everything you built, was lost to time. After a long silence, he asked, "What happened here, Vayara?" She stared at the ground, her hands trembling slightly. "A war," she finally said. "A war that we lost." Elias straightened. "Who did you fight?" Her expression hardened. "A force far worse than those machines." She looked up at him. "And if you have come to this place, it means they are still out there." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. "Who are they?" he asked. Vayara's voice was almost a whisper. "The Vor Dominion." The name meant nothing to Elias, but the way she said it, The sheer weight behind those words. It was enough to make him realize something. He wasn't just stranded on an alien planet anymore. He was standing at the edge of a forgotten war. And now, he was part of it. Elias stared at Vayara, his mind racing. The Vor Dominion. He had never heard of them, but the way she spoke the name made it clear they were dangerous. What are they? He asked. Vayara's glowing eyes darkened. Destroyers, she said. They came from the void, seeking to consume all that was not theirs. My people fought them for centuries. But in the end, we lost. Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. If you lost, how are you still here? Vayara exhaled slowly. When defeat was certain, my people placed me in the eternal chamber, hoping that one day I could awaken and rebuild what was lost. She gestured to the walls around them. But now my guardians do not recognize me, which means the Vor did more than just defeat us. They erased us. Elias rubbed his face, frustration building inside him. Great, so now I'm stuck on a dead planet, with an ancient alien queen, killer robots, and some kind of cosmic empire that might still be out there. He let out a short laugh. I should have stayed in bed. Vayara tilted her head. You find this amusing? Elias sighed. No, I just laugh when I'm stressed. It's either that or start screaming. Vayara studied him for a moment, then turned away. If the Vor are still out there, then your people may be in danger as well. That wiped the amusement from Elias's face. He had been so focused on survival that he hadn't thought about what this meant for humanity. If the Vor had wiped out the Azari Empire, what would stop them from doing the same to Earth? We need to get off this planet, he said. Vayara nodded. Agreed. Elias looked at her. Do you have a ship? Vayara hesitated. There was once a fleet, but after thousands of years, I do not know what remains. She turned to a control panel on the wall, brushing her fingers over its surface. The golden symbols flickered, and a holographic map appeared in the air. Elias whistled. That's impressive. Vayara's eyes scanned the map quickly. There. She pointed to a location deep within the ruins. A vault. If anything remains, it will be there. Elias crossed his arms, and let me guess, it won't be easy to reach. Vayara's expression was unreadable. Nothing ever is. Into the depths. The underground tunnels beneath the ruined city were dark and endless. Strange glowing vines crept along the walls, pulsing softly with light. Elias and Vayara moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing through the silence. Elias adjusted his oxygen supply, checking his wrist display. Running low. He needed to find a breathable atmosphere soon, or he wouldn't make it. How far is this vault? He asked. Vayara studied the map on her wrist. Not far, but we must be careful. Elias frowned. Because of the guardians. Vayara shook her head. No, because of them. She pointed ahead. Elias followed her gaze and felt his breath catch. A massive pile of bones stretched across the tunnel. Some were human-like, others were not. What happened here? He whispered. Vayara's face was grim. The Vor were not the only ones we fought. In our desperation, we created something that did not stop when the war was over. Elias's stomach tightened. What do you mean? Before she could answer, a low clicking sound echoed through the tunnel. Elias froze. Vayara grabbed his wrist, pulling him back. We are not alone. From the shadows, a shape moved. It crawled along the walls, its body long and insect-like, covered in smooth black armor. Its many eyes gleamed in the dim light, reflecting an unnatural intelligence. Its jaws opened, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Elias's pulse spiked. I hate this place. The creature lunged. Elias dove to the side, barely avoiding its razor-sharp claws. Vayara raised her hands, and a burst of golden energy slammed into the beast, sending it skidding across the floor. But it wasn't alone. From the darkness, more crawled forward. Elias pulled out a broken metal pipe from the debris. Not much, but better than nothing. Veyara stood tall, her energy crackling around her hands. Do not let them surround us. Elias smirked despite the danger. I wasn't planning on it. The creatures attacked. Elias swung his pipe, smashing one of them in the face. The impact barely did anything, but it bought him time to move. Another lunged at him, but he dodged, slamming the pipe against its leg, knocking it off balance. Veyara moved with deadly precision, her golden energy tearing through the creatures like fire through dry grass. Each movement was calculated, controlled, like a warrior who had done this 1,000 times before. Elias, on the other hand, fought like someone just trying to stay alive. Veyara, any chance you've got some ancient super whip on? He yelled. She blasted another creature away. No, but I have something better. She raised both hands, and suddenly, the tunnel walls responded. The symbols along the stone began to glow. The air hummed with energy. Then, with a deep, earth-shaking rumble, the ceiling collapsed. Dust and debris rained down as the creatures shrieked, crushed beneath the falling rocks. Elias coughed, covering his face as the tunnel settled. When the dust cleared, the creatures were gone. Elias stared at Veyara, wide-eyed. Remind me not to make you mad. She simply turned away. We are close. Come. Elias took a deep breath and followed. The vault. They finally reached the vault, a massive metal door, untouched by time. Veyara stepped forward, placing her hand against it. The door recognized her. With a deep hiss, it slid open. Inside, rows of ancient technology lined the walls. Weapons, armor, and a ship. Elias grinned. Now we're talking. Veyara stepped toward the ship, her golden eyes shining. With this, we may have a chance. Elias's smile faded. A chance for what? Veyara turned to him. To finish the war. Elias stared at the sleek alien ship resting inside the vault. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Smooth, black metal with golden patterns glowing faintly along its surface. The ship looked ancient, yet untouched by time. Veyara stepped forward, placing her palm against the hull. The golden patterns pulsed, responding to her touch. The ship was alive. Elias crossed his arms. Please tell me this thing still flies. Veyara closed her eyes, her lips moving in an ancient whisper. The ship hummed softly. Then, with a low mechanical hiss, the entrance slid open. Elias let out a breath. I'll take that as a yes. Inside the ship, the interior was dark and quiet, filled with smooth panels and curved walls. As soon as Veyara stepped inside, the ship came to life. Golden lights flickered on, illuminating the control panels. Strange symbols floated in the air, shifting as if waiting for her command. Elias hesitated before stepping in. So, can I breathe in here, or should I hold my breath? Veyara gave a small smile. The ship will adjust to you. Elias exhaled in relief as the air shifted, becoming breathable. He walked up to the main control panel, watching as holographic screens displayed unknown star maps. This ship is way beyond anything we have back on Earth. Veyara placed her hands on the controls. It was once one of our greatest warships. If it still functions, it will take us where we need to go. Elias frowned. And where is that exactly? Veyara's golden eyes darkened. To find out if the Vor are still out there. The ship takes flight. Elias settled into his seat as the ship rumbled beneath them. The controls glowed brighter, and outside the vault, the ground shook. Veyara. Elias asked, "What's happening?" Veyara's expression remained calm. The ship is waking up. Outside, the massive vault door ripped away, breaking into pieces. Dust and debris swirled as the ship slowly lifted off the ground, floating effortlessly. Elias gripped the armrest. Okay, this is either really cool or really terrifying. The ship tilted upward, and then, in a sudden burst of speed, they were flying. The ruined city below blurred as they shot toward the sky. Elias felt his stomach flip as the planet's surface fell away beneath them. Through the viewing window, the stars appeared, bright and endless. Elias exhaled in amazement. We actually made it. But Veyara's gaze remained locked on the holographic display in front of her. The ship was scanning the system, searching for something. Elias noticed her expression. "You're looking for them, aren't you?" She nodded. If the Vor still exist, they will have left traces. Elias wasn't sure he wanted to find them, but he knew one thing. Earth needed to know what was coming. A distress signal. Suddenly, the ship beeped. Elias jumped. Was that a good beep or a bad beep? Veyara's fingers moved swiftly over the controls. A signal. A distress call. Elias frowned. From who? The holographic display shifted, revealing a small, damaged ship drifting in space. Elias leaned forward. "That's not one of yours, is it?" Veyara shook her head. "No, but someone is still inside." Elias hesitated. Could be a trap. Veyara's eyes met his, or it could be someone who needs help. Elias sighed. "I really hate this part." Veyara didn't wait. She guided their ship toward the distress signal, approaching the broken vessel carefully. As they got closer, Elias could see the ship's damage. Burn marks, torn metal, and deep gashes along its hull. It looked like it had been attacked. A small panel on Veyara's console lit up. "There's life inside," she confirmed. Elias shook his head. "This is a bad idea." Veyara ignored him. She extended the ship's docking bridge, connecting their ship to the damaged one. Elias grabbed a weapon from the supply rack. A sleek, silver pistol-like device. He had no idea how it worked, but at least he wouldn't be going in empty-handed. Veyara led the way. And together, they stepped into the wrecked ship. The Survivor. Inside, the air was thin and cold. Sparks flickered from broken consoles, and the walls were scorched with battle damage. Elias moved carefully, his grip tightening on the weapon. "I really don't like this." Then, a noise. A weak, shuddering breath. Elias turned toward the sound. In the corner of the room, partially buried under debris, was a figure. Veyara rushed forward, carefully moving the debris aside. The figure was human. Elias's eyes widened. No way. The survivor was a woman, her suit torn and burned. She was barely conscious, her face pale from oxygen loss. Elias quickly checked her vitals. "She's alive, but she won't last long." Veyara touched the side of the woman's face. The golden symbols on her skin flashed, and the ship's lights responded. The air grew thicker, more breathable. The woman's eyes flickered open. She gasped, coughing weakly. Her gaze locked onto Elias. "Human," she whispered. Elias leaned closer. "Yeah, that's me. Who are you?" Her breathing was shallow, but she managed to speak 2 words. "They're coming." Elias felt the air leave his lungs. He didn't have to ask who they were. Veyara looked at him, her golden eyes serious. The Vor. A deep, distant rumble shook the ship. Elias turned to the viewing window. Outside, in the darkness of space, something moved. A shadow, massive and alien, with glowing red eyes. The Vor had found them. Elias's heart pounded in his chest as he stared out the ship's viewport. The massive shadow outside was unmistakable. It was enormous, larger than any ship he had ever seen, and its presence filled the void of space with an unnerving darkness. Veyara's voice broke the silence, her tone sharp. "The Vor." Elias clenched his fists. "I thought you said they were gone." "They were," she replied, her voice colder now. "But they never truly left. And now they found us." Elias stepped forward, his eyes still locked on the massive ship. The Vor's vessel seemed to shift in space, its lights flickering like a predator stalking its prey. He could feel the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. "We need to move." "Now," he said, glancing at Veyara. Veyara didn't argue. She turned to the ship's controls, her fingers flying across the panels with practiced precision. The ship rumbled to life, and the engine hummed softly, but Elias could hear the tension in the air. The Vor ship was far too close. If they didn't act fast, they would be trapped. "What can we do?" Elias asked, the desperation creeping into his voice. Viara's eyes were steady, her mind already working. "We can't outrun them, but we can fight." Elias wasn't sure if he was ready for that. He had never fought in space. Hell, he had barely fought on Earth. But there was no time for hesitation. The Vor were here, and if they didn't stop them, they wouldn't get another chance. Viara moved swiftly, her eyes scanning the ship's systems. "I'll need you to help me with the ship's weapons. We can't rely solely on this vessel's defenses." Elias nodded. "Weapons? You mean the ones you didn't tell me about earlier?" Viara gave him a faint smile. "There are more secrets on this ship than you could imagine." She handed him a control panel. It was sleek and alien, with glowing symbols running across its surface. "This is the targeting system. You'll have to manually adjust the aim." Elias stared at it for a moment, unsure of what to do. He wasn't a trained soldier. He was just a guy trying to survive in a universe that was far beyond his understanding. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let Viara face this alone. "Got it," he said, his voice steady. He placed his hands on the panel, trying to remember everything she had shown him. Viara moved to the central console, engaging shields. The ship vibrated slightly as an invisible barrier enveloped them, but Elias knew it wouldn't hold forever. The Vor's ship was far too powerful. Elias nodded. The plan seemed simple enough, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. The Vor had technology that far outclassed anything humanity had, and they weren't likely to go down without a fight. Viara turned and walked toward the control panel. "Prepare yourself, Elias. It's going to be a long journey. We don't know what we'll face." Elias stood up and moved toward the ship's central console, readying himself for whatever came next. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew there was no other choice. The ship hummed to life again as Viara punched in the coordinates for the Vor's last known location. The massive vessel, though damaged, was still capable of space travel. They had only one chance to get this right. "Set course," Viara said. The ship lurched slightly as it jumped into hyperspace, the stars around them stretching into bright lines of light. Elias looked out the window, wondering just how much time they had before the Vor caught up with them. The long journey. The hours stretched into days as the ship sailed through the endless reaches of space. Time seemed to lose all meaning. Elias spent his days learning more about the alien technology that powered the ship, getting familiar with the holographic displays and the advanced weaponry. There was so much to learn, but he knew he couldn't waste time. Viara, meanwhile, was always at the ship's controls, her face tense with concentration. She rarely spoke, but Elias could tell she was struggling with the same pressure he felt. The Vor were coming, and this time, they might not be able to fight them off. As the days passed, Elias became more and more aware of how much he relied on Viara. She was the only one who truly understood what they were up against. She knew how to pilot the ship, how to navigate through space, and how to keep them both alive. Without her, he would be lost in this vast alien world. One evening, as the ship traveled through the darkness, Elias found Viara standing by a window, staring out at the stars. "I don't understand," he said, approaching her. "Why me? Why did you choose me to help you? I'm just a guy from Earth. I don't have the skills you need." Viara turned to him, her golden eyes softening. "You underestimate yourself, Elias. You've survived this far, haven't you? That's more than most can say. You're strong, and I need someone who can fight for what's worth saving." Elias blinked in surprise. "You really think that?" "I do." Her voice was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes that couldn't be ignored. "You've shown courage, even when you didn't believe in yourself, and that's what matters." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. It was hard to believe he was actually making a difference, but hearing Vayara say it made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could do this. A new threat. The calm didn't last long. Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared, breaking through the silence. Vayara's hands flew across the console as she scanned the new data. "It's the Vor," she said, her voice low and tense. "They found us." Elias's heart skipped a beat. He rushed to the central control panel, watching as the scanner displayed dozens of Vor ships emerging from hyperspace. The fleet was huge, far bigger than he could have imagined. They were outnumbered. "We can't fight all of them," Elias said, his mind racing. Vayara didn't hesitate. "We don't have to. We just need to make sure they don't reach Earth." The Vor fleet closed in quickly, and there was no time to waste. Vayara engaged the ship's weapon systems, but Elias knew they were outmatched. This was going to be their last stand. "Prepare for battle," Vayara said, her voice calm, but her eyes betrayed the seriousness of the situation. "We'll give Earth one last chance to prepare for what's coming." Elias grabbed the weapon he had been practicing with, feeling the weight of it in his hands. He was ready. He didn't know how they would survive this, but he wouldn't go down without a fight. The final battle. The ship shook violently as the Vor fleet launched their first barrage of fire. Explosions rocked the hull, but the shields held for now. Vayara's fingers moved with lightning speed as she adjusted their course, dodging incoming fire. Elias fired back, his aim steady as he targeted the nearest Vor ship. The blast hit its shield, but the ship didn't go down. The Vor were relentless. "We can't hold out forever," Elias shouted, his frustration mounting. Vayara didn't look away from the controls. "We don't have to. We just need to cause enough damage to slow them down." Elias fired again. This time, the blast hit the enemy ship's engine. It shuddered, and with a sudden explosion, it was gone. One down. But the Vor had no intention of giving up. More ships came at them, and the battle raged on. "We need to reach their command ship," Vayara said. "It's the only way to stop them." Elias nodded. There was no turning back now. The fate of Earth, and possibly the entire galaxy, was in their hands. As they closed in on the Vor's command vessel, Elias's heart pounded. This was it, their final chance, and they weren't going down without a fight.